Okay, so there's, at the stage that we're at, custom fitting has happened, so we know that these mortise and tenon joins all go in exceptionally well and everything is flush and as it should be. There's a final test and check to do before we get any glue on it, and it is that whether or not it will go in square. And there are a number of ways this table can end up with really great joins but not going together square. For example, if here between the two shoulders, no matter how perfect it is with the join that it goes into, the component that it goes into, if it's not the same as the one opposite it, it's going to go together not square. Now, here is a good simple check you can do, and you sit both the shoulders of the sides together, and if they're flush, you're good. Then same with the ends, you sit both of the shoulders of the ends together. And if you've got a discrepancy, so one is way shorter than the other, you need to go and level those up. Okay, but we know that this one is working well, so I'm happy with this one here. Then the next thing I need to do really is what we call a dry fit. So this is an attempt at putting it together just to identify if there are any problems, because if there are, and we don't find that out until we've got glue in, we've got a shorter rushing amount of time to fix whatever error that we need to fix whilst the rest of the assembly is drying, and that can be a bit of a disaster. So we don't want to be forced into rushing any of this for accuracy. And I've got a feeling just when I did that test, was one of these tight? I might have put that together the wrong way around, or was it tight? It's on the tight side. Okay, so the thing that I've done then, ready to assemble, and I will do a dry fit without any glue in, but the thing that I've done is got together everything I need. So I've got clamps here, and I've got 4 because one's going over each end and over each side. And I do sometimes get a little bit of a problem with those overlapping. The other problem that I've seen when people come to assemble this is about where they attempt to put the clamp. So what we really want to do, especially if we're working with one of the ends here, is we want to push the mortise into the tenon, or the tenon into the mortise actually. So where we want the clamp is across here, but I have seen people try to clamp here and there's nothing in the middle and the legs go in like that. Now, they never really get it exaggerated that far out, but it's no good putting the clamp here. So we want one, but we've got to have them across the sides and the ends. So we want one fairly low down. And I've got my pieces of scrap wood there so I don't introduce any damage to the work. And I'm just going to sit those here. I have to tell those workmen off, but they're fixing the roof, aren't they? Can be a little bit tricky with our particular tables that we've got, and I'm probably going to need to shuffle around and do this on the diagonal a little bit. But again, work area preparation, if we were to read your assessment schedule for level 1 for assembly, begins with work area preparation. So that's about having enough space and having everything that you need. So like you could see, we've got the clamps and we've got a bit of space here, and we've got the glue that we will need as soon as we identify that we've sorted. Okay, so I'm just going to sit those on like a dry fit. Now I've put, when it hasn't fallen apart, I've put both of them on, both of these clamps, before I wind, and I'm just trying to sit them in there before I start to add any pressure. And you should hopefully notice that I've done something that's a thing that you should always do with your clamping, which is unwind them all. So all of these orange clamps have been unwound to the maximum that they could be unwound, ready for this assembly job. It's not working out well unless I straddle, I think. it's probably a good example of identifying possible errors, because I don't especially like tightening those clamps up when they sit down on the tabletop. So it's much easier to have one end of those overhanging there like that, so we can use the winding mechanism. So you can see that if I was doing this and there was glue in there and glue running down, I already would have started in a kind of a fairly poor position. So this is much more like where I want to start. And I'm not going to put much pressure on there because I am still quite close to the bottom, and what's happened is this leg has pulled out, and ideally I want to raise this clamp and push right in the middle of the tenon, but I need another 2 on there still. So what I'm going to do is set them up as best as I can, and then I'm going to jiggle. And the other thing that I've got here in preparation actually is 2 or 3 tri-squares and a tape measure, and the tape measure is probably the key component of getting this right, because whilst you'll see in a minute that I can check that I've got the whole thing appropriate and vertical, and nothing's leaning in or out, what I can have is ever so slightly, I can have it all square at right angles like this, but shifted in a parallelogram kind of thing. And I'll show you the test for that, because this is a piece of quality control. This is what that phase that we're doing is called. And it's a test and a check of the assembly, but it's also there so that we can get accuracy and quality correct. So at the point at which I've got all of the clamps on, I will start to tighten them up a little bit, one at a time, and not in huge amounts, maybe a turn or half a turn, or until I've closed some gaps. And I don't want these particularly tight, partly because it's just a dry fit to see if it will go together square, but partly because I've done no tests and checks yet. So the first one will be to sit the tri-square in there and see if those legs are sitting level, and I'll do that to each one. The second one will be to see whether or not the whole unit is shifted, and the way I do that is I measure across the diagonals. Now I'm not going to choose the ends here, I'm going to choose the inside, because that's the piece that if at the frame it's square, it will be square. So that one there is 470, and if this one is 470, it's square, but this one is 462. So I have a long diagonal across here and a short one across there, and if that's the case, we come to this. So I've got quite a long sash clamp, and what I'm going to need to do is slide this over, set it up so that I put the pin in the back and it'll sit on that diagonal, and slowly, this was the long edge, wasn't it? Put it over the long edge, not the short edge, and slowly start to wind. And as you wind, occasionally, if you're smart when you wind, you will see it shift in. And it's shifted then. And once I've seen it shift, I'll measure again and see if I've pulled it back into square, or if I've pulled it too far out the other way. So that one there now is probably 461, which means I've probably gone too far this way, and that one's 465, in which case I'll take it off and I'll put it on my new long diagonal. And we're not using this to hold it together, we're just using it to shift the whole frame into square. So I saw it again shift then, and I'll check, and I'll keep checking until that diagonal is correct. Then I'll recheck all my verticals. If there was glue in it, that would be the time at which I walked away. There's not glue in this one, it's a dry fit. If for some reason I can't get one element square while another element is out of square, then I need to go back and check the components again for whatever reason I missed something. Make sense? Okay, thanks.